you're going to paint an orc army, then you need to know how to paint orc skin. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to do it. Now, as you're going to see, painting orc skin is lots of fun, especially on their faces, because their expressions are just full of character. So it's going to be good. Let's get started. So the first thing that I've done is undercoat the model with Chaos Black Spray. And normally when I'm painting the flesh on an orc, I'd do it amongst painting other colours, so like the jacket and things. But for this example, I'm just going to focus on painting the flesh. Now the first colour to use is Wild Flesh, and as always give the paints a good shake before you use them. And the brushes I'm going to use, well mostly I'm going to use a large brush because the orc skin areas are really large and open. But I also have a standard brush for where I'm painting more detailed areas. So I'm going to start out with a large brush, and what you do is just load up your brush with some paint and put it onto your palette. And this allows you to control how much paint you got on your brush, and also allows you to thin it down with some water. And it's a good idea to do that because this helps the paint flow smoothly from the brush onto the model. So use your palette to make sure you don't have too much paint in your brush, and grab your model, and all you need to do is just start painting all of the skin with this colour. Now as you're doing this, just keep an eye on it to make sure you're not putting too much paint on, because that way you avoid clogging any detail. And also you might find that you can still see some of the black undercoat through this once you're finished. And if that's the case, just let it dry and then apply another thin layer afterwards, because it's always better to apply multiple thin layers than it is one thick layer. Once you've finished base coating the flesh, we can move on to the next stage. And this is going to be to shade it. And for this, the colour you need is Biltang Green. Now I'm going to be using the same two brushes once again so I can jump back and forth between them depending on how big an area I'm painting. But well, I like using shades, they're nice and easy. All you do is load up your brush and then make use of your palette again, just to control how much you've got in the bristles. And all you do is start painting this onto all the areas of the flesh on the model, and you'll see immediately it runs into all that detail and really defines it for you. So all you have to do is work around all of the skin, giving it a coat of this. But as you're putting it on, just keep an eye on it to make sure that you're not putting on too much, because if you do, it can start clogging up detail and pooling and giving some quite horrible effect on it. So just keep it moving, keep it smooth across all of the flesh, and then once you're done, give it about 20 minutes to dry. So I've given the shade plenty of time to dry, and you can see it's really added some depth to the skin. And now we're going to start highlighting it. So the first colour for this is going to be Warboss Green, and I really like doing this stage. This is where you really see it start to come to life. So you need a standard brush for this, and the key to doing this stage is getting a good tip on your brush. So what I do to do that after I've thinned my paint down is just drag my brush along and twist it like that. And that brings all the bristles to a nice point. So what you do, I'll use the arm here, this is a great example. Look where the shade's settled on the areas you've done so far, and all those darker areas, you need to leave those that darker colour, and all the raised surfaces, you paint this colour on those. So you're going around the dark areas like that recessed line down the middle there. Now this really brings out all that detail and definition on the miniature and starts to highlight it for you. See how it's happening on there? And this principle applies across all of the skin. So on the face, you do the same thing. So around the chin down here, I'll be painting this area along here and leaving that darker line in between the chin and the lip, like that. So I need to do this around all the skin now, and well, the same is true across the whole face, even around the eyes. Just leave the eyes dark for now and work around them. So now that I've finished the Warboss Green, well, you can see what I mean. It's really brought out all that detail on the face and really defined the muscle. Now you could leave it here, but if you want to go a bit further, then get hold of some Skarsnik Green. I'm going to use this for an extra highlight. So the brush I'm using is a detail brush, and just get your paint ready on your palette. And like before, it's important that you get a good tip on your brush. So I'm just going to twist the brush like that and get that nice tip. And what you need to do is look carefully at the model for all the sharpest bits of detail. So on the face, looking at things like the brow, and you just paint a bit of this brighter green running along it like that. And then there's his nose, so that's a sharp bit of detail around there. And I've got these cheekbones coming up here as well. And you see doing areas like this just really starts to bring out those features. So I've got some wrinkles just above the teeth as well. So if I just pick them out like that. See, it's really adding to all that depth and all that detail on the face. Now on the arms, it's the same kind of principle. What you do is just look for any raised areas and also look along the muscles. And if you paint thin lines between the brighter green and the darker green like that, it just really helps define all that muscle. So there we go. With that final highlight, the skin is now complete. And, well, seeing as we're painting the face, we may as well finish it off now. So what I'm going to do is share with you now how to paint the teeth and also how to paint the eyes. Now, for doing the teeth first, you're going to need 4 colours. We're going to start out with a base coat of Zandri Dust. Then we're going to shade it with Agrax Earthshade. After that, we'll layer it using the Shabti Bone, and then finally do another layer of Screaming Skull, just for some sharp highlights. Now for the base coat, I'm going to be using a standard brush, and Zandri Dust is the colour. What you need to do is just get your paint ready, and applying this is, well, very much the same as when we were initially painting the skin green. So what you need to do is just paint in all of the teeth. So be as neat as you can, of course, because of all the green we've finished around these. Be looking to completely cover this area. Now also notice I'm not going quite up to the edges, and also if you make any mistakes, just neaten it up with a bit of Warboss green. Once you've finished your base coat of Zandri Dust, just paint some Agrax Earthshade into all the teeth like this. So I'm still using my standard brush, but just make sure that you get the shade running into all that detail between the teeth there, but apply this in moderation so that you can keep it under control. Once the shade is dry, use some Shabti Bone just to start highlighting these teeth. Now to do this you need a fine tip on your brush, and I'm using a detail brush here, and what you do is paint in downward motions like this, so you can start painting nice lines on the raised surface of the teeth, whilst leaving all those darker recesses between them with the darker colour showing through. And then the final stage is to use a fine detail brush to apply a small amount of Screaming Skull just down the middle of the tooth from the tip, only part way like that. And that just gives a nice highlight to finish off the tooth. So there we go, with the Screaming Skull, the teeth are now complete. And now I'm going to move on to the final part that I'm going to show you how to do in this video, and that's how to paint the eyes. Now, the truth is you don't really have to paint the eyes, especially for the rank and file, because they're in quite a lot of shadow anyway, so for most of the models you just don't see them. But if you want to do it, especially for your characters, then this is how. The colour you need is Evil Sunz Scarlet, and I'm going to be using a fine detail brush for this. And the trick here really is, well, it's all about brush control. What you do is thin your paint down with some water, so it's at that sort of consistency, and then you've got to make sure that you get a really fine tip on your brush. And what you do, hold your model as steady as you can, and then very gently just touch the brush to the eye in there like that. And really that's all there is to it, that's all you need to do. If you happen to make a mistake though and put too much red on, then a good way to fix it is to get some Agrax Earthshade and neatly paint that in around it, and that will help hide any mistakes. You might need to go over some green bits as well, but well, that's how you do it. So there you go, that's how you paint orc skin and faces. And as you've seen, it's really not that difficult to do, and because of all their character, it's actually lots of fun as well. So just to recap, when you're painting this part of orc miniatures, the skin and the faces are the most prominent parts of them, so it's worth practicing to get it right, because when you do, your miniature is going to look amazing. Now to help you out with this, just practice getting that really fine tip on your brush, and well, always remember, just be as neat as you possibly can.